I funded Ryan for 5 years. He took 5 months to team up against me and left me with nothing. When I was at my lowest, Ryan stood above me, stepping on my useless left hand. Linda, you raised an ungrateful wolf. Isn't this your own doing? But later, he knelt at my grave, stabbing his own right hand, over and over. He smiled and whispered, Linda, satisfied? If you are, come back. The next time I saw Ryan was at a banquet. Drink after drink of white wine went down my throat, and people around me kept egging me on. Linda can really hold her liquor. Another glass. I smiled lightly and discreetly pressed my spasming, aching stomach. Just as I was about to get up for another drink, Cherry's voice echoed from the doorway. So Linda is really here. She clung to Ryan, pretending to be surprised. I thought they were lying to me. After all, how could someone as important as Linda attend such a banquet? 5 months ago, Linda wouldn't have come to such a banquet. So I raised my glass to Cherry in a toast. Times have changed. I downed my drink in one go, causing the people around to cheer even louder. It seems Linda has learned what humility is these days. Cherry still wore a smiling face. She moved closer to Ryan, deliberately leading him to sit near me. But we do have a connection. This boyfriend of mine used to work for Linda. Only then did I lift my eyes to look at Ryan, dressed sharply in a black suit, with hair neatly combed back. His black eyes were sharp and unfathomable. We hadn't seen each other for 5 months. And he wasn't pretending anymore. A connection, I thought for a moment, then chuckled. Maybe just a dog I threw away. If he can please Cherry, he might have some use. At these words, the room fell silent. Everyone instinctively looked at Ryan. He wasn't angry, just stared at me intensely with those dark eyes. So for the first time, this man I watched grow up showed me his fangs. He said, I'm really curious. What does Linda look like when she's crying after being bitten by a dog? For a moment, some faces changed color. I first met Ryan in the mountains. A delicate-looking boy stood out among the simple, shy children. I glanced at him and didn't think much of it. The snowy mountains blocked the roads, so our group had to stay in this village until the weather cleared. We couldn't get supplies from the car, so everything had to be simple. Tom and the others thought I was being mistreated, so they pooled their valuables to get someone from the village to find us some wild game. There was a lot of money, but only Ryan took the job. He didn't talk much, worked efficiently, and his looks piqued my interest. Until the night before we left, Ryan knocked on my door. The boy, in his teens, was thin but well built from hard work. Under the dim yellow light, I observed him without restraint, but soon looked away. What do you want? Ryan's gaze was direct. I want out. The mountains didn't only breed simplicity and shyness. You could find other ways, much better than now. I tapped the table, smiling. So you've been planning this these days? My grades aren't good. This is the fastest way. Ryan frowned slightly, showing some anxiety. Still young, he lacked patience. Seeing my silence, he added, I'm better than those people. I liked good-looking people, so those around me all had good looks. This gave Ryan a misconception. He moved closer, pretending to be calm, his breath touching my ear. Before that kiss landed, I chuckled and said, okay. A shadow flitted past the window. I glanced at it, then looked at Ryan quickly dressing, suddenly curious. If I didn't agree, what would you do? Ryan paused in dressing. He hesitated between hiding and pleasing me for a moment, then confessed, I'd call for help. Those black eyes held a fierceness and calm beyond his years. Ryan said, then drag you to hell with me. I laughed and had Tom take him the next day. For the next 5 years, I was Ryan's guardian in name. I spent 5 years raising Ryan well, so he only took 5 months to get with Cherry's family, putting me in an unprecedented crisis. Thinking of this, I sighed silently. I never attended banquets. Never thought the one time I did, I'd end up being threatened and taken to Cherry's house. Never thought that one day, the high and mighty Linda would become a stray dog. Cherry's voice was full of excitement. She kicked me, forcing me to raise my head. Linda, how does it feel now? I leaned back slightly, speaking helplessly. Not much feeling, but could you step away, Cherry? Your smell's too strong for me. Cherry's face turned red and then pale, and she slapped me. Linda is always sharp-tongued. Her tone is so sarcastic. What gift did Linda bring for coming to visit us this time? I pressed my tongue against my aching cheek and smiled, glancing at Cherry's hand, implying, seems Cherry recovered well. Last year, Cherry fell into my hands. She didn't bring a gift, so I left her lover without a hand. Cherry was scared silly back then. Linda, Cherry trembled with anger. She wanted to grab a knife, but Ryan stopped her. He had been watching quietly all along and only spoke now. She likes painting. His tone was calm, as if he were just talking about what he had for lunch today. Likes painting. Cherry's expression twisted. She had someone hold me down, her high heel pressing harder on my wrist. Linda's hands are really precious. She's left-handed. Her left hand is her pride. Ryan was still expressionless. Stepping on her right hand won't help. Thanks for the tip, Ryan. Cherry smiled and blew a kiss, then had someone crush my wrist. I didn't make a sound the whole time. Ryan kept staring at me. He seemed to have more to say to Linda. Cherry, in a good mood, patted Ryan on the shoulder and left the room. Seems like you're doing well. I tried to suppress the tremor in my voice and said sarcastically, but after all these years, you're still using the same trick. Ryan, did everything I taught you go to the dogs? Why don't you smile now? Ryan questioned, avoiding my sarcasm. You can smile so happily at Cherry, but why not now? I tugged at the corner of my mouth and closed my eyes, not interested in responding. This only angered Ryan more. He stepped on my ruined left wrist, towering over me, and said slowly, Linda, isn't it your fault for raising an ungrateful dog? His words were swallowed as he kissed me, more like a brutal assault, relentless until there was blood. My mouth filled with the strong taste of iron. He squeezed my neck and laughed. Linda, how does it feel to be bitten by a dog? I forgot, I said. The current Linda is worse off than a dog. After destroying my wrist, Ryan personally escorted me out. In front of others, he reverted to his usual silent demeanor, but his dark eyes hinted at unrest just below the surface. Tom waited outside for me. Seeing Ryan and me, Tom was both angry and anxious, but dared not speak. Let him go, Ryan said in a deep voice. Not happening. I glanced at my limp left hand and smirked. If Tom leaves, who will take me back? Ryan didn't respond. As I walked towards Tom, a barely audible voice reached my ears. I'll handle it myself, I heard, but my steps didn't falter. Cherry was ruthless. My left hand was unlikely to fully recover. Tom was furious, cursing mostly at Ryan. At last, his eyes reddened as he repeatedly apologized to me. I knew what he was apologizing for. Ryan had been around Tom most of the 5 years since he came back. Tom treated him like a brother. Much of the information and connections Ryan took came from Tom. How's Jack doing? I changed the topic, and Tom, understanding, began reporting the latest updates. Linda, Tom worried, if Jack really partners with Cherry, what will we do? He hesitated. Isn't that perfect? I smiled at him. Saves me the trouble of taking them down one by one. But Ryan, I trained him. I interrupted calmly. No matter how ruthless he is, can he outdo me? Tom thought for a moment, then felt reassured and left. Are you sure you can handle him? Amy attended to my wounds, her gaze lingering on my bitten lip before frowning. She said coldly, I should have taken care of him when I had the chance. Now, we're almost bankrupt, and your hand's damaged. Linda, what are you thinking? You could have killed Ryan in his first month of action. Usually calm, Amy almost pointed at my forehead in anger. Amy, do men still grow at 23? My sudden question startled her, then came anger. But I continued before she could explode. He seemed taller after just 5 months. His physique, perfectly nurtured by me, no doubt. He's an excellent student. How long did it take me to drive out Jack and rename his company? More than 5 months, right? Bright future for the young. Amy's face turned blue at my praise. Linda, she stood up abruptly. I wish I could look inside your head to see what's in there. Enough already. I smiled at her, speaking softly. Not yet. It's not over. So close now. So, Ryan's that good. You like him that much. But before leaving, Amy couldn't resist but ask. Mid-sentence, she hesitated and didn't continue. I pretended not to notice her pause and smiled. Amy left in a huff. In the beginning, everyone thought Ryan was just a toy to me during my leisure time. Now, seeing the ant shake the tree, they believe I'm obsessed, lost over Ryan. Everyone's waiting for my downfall. After returning from Cherries, I nursed my injured hand while continuing my work. Ryan took many people when he left. We had talent gaps, broken funding chains, and 2 lurking competitors. I couldn't rest, but to others, it seemed like Ryan broke my heart, and I was burying myself in work to numb the pain. Even Tom and others subtly reminded me not to obsess over love, emphasizing the importance of health. I didn't explain much, focusing entirely on work. The circle is small, and soon news of my wasted left hand spread. Knowing Ryan was involved made people think even more. A camel, even dying, is bigger than a horse. A week later, Sam personally brought Cherry to apologize. The grudge over my hand was brushed off with a light comment. My daughter's used to being pampered. She likes to joke. Please, Linda, don't hold it against her. I smiled, picked up a pen, and before Sam could react, jabbed its tip towards his weakest wrist spot. Sam was startled. I didn't stab, just drew a long blue line on his wrist. Coincidentally, I love joking too. I withdrew the pen, smiling at Cherry. I accept Cherry's apology. In the future, if I get a chance to joke with Miss Cherry, I hope she'll be as forgiving as today. Two people's faces turned blue then red. From start to finish, the only person whose expression didn't change much was Ryan, who was quite familiar with me. Ryan came along as well. When they saw Ryan, Tom and the others looked furious, especially after they found out that Ryan was going to get engaged to Cherry. Ryan told me that his parents passed away early, and he hoped Linda could attend the engagement party as his family member. Sam, having a bad experience with me, was looking for a way to regain his dignity from somewhere else. He started to speak with a meaningful smile. By the way, I must thank Linda for raising such an excellent son-in-law for me. I was silent for a few seconds and nodded, of course, it's my honor. Maybe Sam didn't expect me to be so nonchalant, so he didn't push further, and decided to leave after saying a few more words. Cherry deliberately followed Sam out a step later, holding Ryan's arm, looking shy. She didn't speak, but Ryan did. He said, I remember Linda has a great eye for this. When we pick out the wedding dress next week, we have to ask Linda to help Cherry. Cherry instinctively frowned and wanted to refuse, but Ryan, knowing she was about to refuse, leaned over and whispered something in her ear right after speaking. Whatever he said made her resistance disappear. She gave me a provocative look and said triumphantly, well, thank you in advance, Linda. You really have to help me pick it out. They seemed confident I wouldn't refuse, and in fact, I couldn't refuse. By then, I could talk to Linda in detail about the cooperation on that piece of land in the west of the city. Ryan looked up at me and chuckled. If Linda doesn't come, the cooperation can't continue. The company's cash flow was stuck. I had planned to take that land and establish a line with the government, but I didn't expect Ryan to know this internal information and use it to threaten me. Ryan, don't you have any shame? Tom yelled, looking like he was about to rush over and hit him any second. I'm just trying to discuss a business deal with Linda. Besides, doesn't Linda need business right now? Ryan curved his lips into a slight smirk, his gaze carrying a hint of provocation. Well, thanks to you, I said, smiling helplessly, pretending to be distressed. I have to pay out of my own pocket. Something I said seemed to infuriate Ryan. His face darkened instantly, his eyes showing a chilling anger. I ignored Ryan's unpredictable mood and turned my head to look at Cherry, who already didn't look good. When is it? I asked. Next Wednesday, she replied, perhaps afraid I would back out. That rascal Ryan kept sending messages to remind me about trying on the wedding dress. I got so annoyed, I blocked him. After blocking 4 or 5 numbers, Ryan stopped contacting me. But Cherry came to find me personally, with a boy who looked somewhat similar to Ryan. What's this about, Miss Cherry? I asked. Cherry, unusually, spoke very politely. I'm here to apologize. Apologize? I glanced at the nervous boy beside her, then hesitated for a moment. A soft Ryan was enough for Cherry to hear. Seeing me staring at the boy's face, a pleased look quickly flashed across Cherry's eyes. She reached out and rudely pushed the boy towards me. Go on. Linda, the boy looked at me timidly. Ryan is still Ryan. I turned my head away hastily, smiling at Cherry. Miss Cherry, I'm afraid this gift isn't quite right. What do you mean? She frowned. Nothing. I just mean that Ryan is one of a kind. I paused, realizing I had said too much, and quickly changed the topic. Miss Cherry, you've already apologized. That's different. Cherry seemed to verify some suspicions, looking quite pleased. She gave a strange smile. I didn't apologize sincerely before. Does Linda really not like his face? I hesitated for a moment, and Cherry seized the opportunity, giving the boy a subtle signal. Linda, the boy grabbed my hand, looking pitiful. I can do anything. I didn't pull away, but quietly looked at him. After a moment, I spoke. Don't make any expressions. The boy was startled, but still obediently followed my words. Looking like this, he resembled Ryan even more. A knowing look appeared in Cherry's eyes. She left alone, but before leaving, she gave a mocking smile and said disdainfully, I thought Linda was a cold-hearted businesswoman. Didn't expect you to be so emotional. I didn't respond to Cherry. This made her leave proudly, like a victorious general. Watching Cherry's back, I silently chuckled. Wednesday wedding dress shopping. Miss Linda, this is the place. The sales assistant led me to a private room and halted at the door, bowing slightly. I nodded and opened the door. The room was dark. Just as I was about to find the light switch, the door slammed shut behind me, and a warm body quietly pressed against my back. Cold hands brushed my waist gently, then grabbed and pulled me forcefully towards them. Warm breath fanned over my neck. No one spoke immediately. I blinked, adjusting to the dim room, and looked around. Just the two of us. Ryan seemed to sense my intention. He paused and chuckled. I heard Linda is deeply in love with me, using work to numb herself. even recently raising a little lover who looks like me. Ryan's sources are really accurate, I replied. Why don't you keep looking? See, when I planned to have that little lover move into the villa in the woods. The villa in the woods was where Ryan used to live. That statement seemed to anger him, and the hand gripping my waist tightened. Linda, pissing off a mad dog won't do any good, Ryan warned. I ignored him. Since the leading lady isn't here, it seems like there's not much use for me as an advisor. How could there be no leading lady? Ryan scoffed. The lights in the room suddenly turned on, the glaring brightness making me squint instinctively. But then I froze. In front of me were rows upon rows of wedding dresses, in all sorts of styles. Since she didn't come, we can only trouble Linda to try them on, Ryan said. He walked over to me, looking me up and down, his gaze becoming increasingly brazen. He smiled. I think Linda's figure is pretty similar to my fiancé's. Why not let Linda be her stand-in for a bit? Ryan knew me well and knew how to crush my pride. Before coming here, I imagined countless ways he might humiliate me, but I never thought he'd have me try on Cherry's wedding dresses. Linda doesn't agree. Since I hadn't spoken for a while, the malice in Ryan's eyes grew stronger. In a mocking tone, he said, looks like Linda doesn't care all that much about Lynn Enterprises, as people say. Ryan, I looked up at him, my voice calm. I brought you out of the mountains, personally taught you, and gave you as much freedom as I could within my means. I feel like I haven't wronged you in any way. Ryan, I owe you nothing. Owe me nothing. Ryan laughed, his tone exaggerated. I thought Linda would say, Ryan, it's you who owes me. I stayed silent. Why aren't you saying anything? What should I say? I sighed slightly, tolerating his bad temper, as I always did. Ryan, what do you want me to say? My words choked him up a bit. Linda, you should be taking down the company, and taking me down in one go. I suddenly stepped forward, cutting him off. I taught you, Ryan, I said, pressing my left hand against his chest. We've known each other for 5 years. I taught you hand in hand. No one knows my weaknesses better than you. You must know that this level of attack can't hurt me now. I looked up at him, my gaze becoming provocative. But Ryan, do you dare to go further? Ryan gritted his teeth, staring at me intensely. Forget it, I said. Seeing him like this, I lost interest. I stepped back, turning towards the wedding dresses. You still have a lot to learn. Linda, Ryan called to me with a deep gaze. You deliberately pretended to take that person in. You deliberately acted deeply in love with me in front of Cherry. You are deliberately provoking me. His tone was certain. I kept picking out dresses, ignoring him. Ryan thought he understood me, but in reality, he only got the first 2 points right. The wedding dresses fit perfectly, including the shoe sizes. Since my left hand wasn't convenient to use, I asked a sales assistant for help. This wedding dress is simply tailored for you. The assistant kept praising me. You and the gentleman next to you look like a perfect match. She assumed that Ryan and I were here to try on wedding dresses. So, when I smiled and said I was just trying them on for his fiancée, the assistant couldn't maintain her expression. The size is wrong. Ryan was visibly irritated. With a sulky face, he picked faults in a dress that fit me perfectly. Enlarge this part. This part needs to be smaller. He finally held me down, nodding slightly to the assistant. Come over and make the alterations. The assistant was frightened. She hesitated. Why don't you tell us the exact size, sir, and wait until this lady changes out of the dress? What a hassle, Ryan sneered. He took the scissors from the table and quickly made a cut at the waist of the wedding dress. The assistant gasped, Sir, you can leave now. I smiled at her. Please close the door. The assistant hesitated, but Ryan's shout of get out scared her away. Ryan, I frowned slightly, a hint of reprimand in my tone. Where are your manners that I taught you? Linda, do you like being a teacher that much? Ryan scoffed. The cold blade moved up to my chest. I glanced at it and chuckled. You used to be a good student, but now you've turned bad. There was another cut on the collar. The sharp blade nicked my skin, a bead of blood forming on the wound. Linda's figure is much better than my fiancé's. Ryan pretended not to hear me. He tossed the scissors aside, admiring his handiwork. Especially that face, he said, gripping my chin and forcing me to look at myself in the mirror. I kept my composure. I hope Cherry doesn't get mad hearing that. Ryan was silent for a moment, then suddenly released me. Just as I was wondering why he wasn't continuing his madness, he stared at me with a burning gaze. Linda, I am the first man to see you in a wedding dress. This time, I beat Jason. Jason, it had been a long time since I heard that name, and I was momentarily stunned. For the first time, I was silent in front of Ryan for so long, losing my ground. So Ryan laughed, even to the point of tears. He pressed on the wound on my neck, speaking harshly. You gave your dowry to the company. How about I compensate you with one? I ruined your left hand. How about we do one more with your other hand? I snapped out of it and gave Ryan a smile. No, it had been a long time since I heard that name. That night, after Ryan mentioned it, I dreamed of Jason. The dream was long. It was almost everything about Jason and me. He took me out of the orphanage and taught me everything. Jason was clear from the beginning. He told me he was just using me. Using my gratitude, he shaped me into the sharpest knife. And I clearly told Jason, no one else would want me besides you. My biological father was a rapist, my biological mother a mistress. No one would want a kid who's been a thief from a young age. I said this while Jason was struggling to tie my ponytail with 2 bunny hairbands. You could have had better, Jason. You're hurting me. Sorry. He said sorry, but kept smiling, no guilt on his face. I suspected he did it on purpose. Jason quickened his pace, then gently patted my head and shoved the mirror in front of me. Look at my handiwork. His voice was full of pride. I stared at Jason's pale fingers entwined with strands of my hair and said seriously, Jason, what if I go bald? I'll buy you the best wig. Jason answered without hesitation. He was always like that. Since he took me from the orphanage, he always gave me the best, even though he just wanted to use me. At that time, I sneered, then I'll kill you. You can't kill me. Jason wasn't angry. He patiently explained, you're not even as tall as me now. Can't even hold a gun. A knife? You might hurt yourself, but with your talent, maybe in a few years. Jason was genuinely considering how many years it would take for me to kill him. In the end, he shrugged helplessly, but unfortunately, even if you train non-stop, it'll have to wait until you're grown up. I gave him a cold stare. Don't be so down, Linda. Jason pinched my cheek. Girls should smile more. Why the cold face every day? Jason, I interrupted. Why did you name me Linda? Because I thought it sounded nice. Jason answered without thinking. I didn't believe him. As I was about to ask more, Jason's family doctor arrived. It was time for his routine check. See you tomorrow, Linda. Jason waved and his smile faded behind the closed wooden door. His health was always poor, yet he had to bear the weight of a large family alone. Before me, Jason had no friends, no relatives, just a sick body and endless mess to clean up. I stood there for a long time, until the butler came to lead me to my room. The next day, Jason found more tasks for me. No one brought up the interrupted topic. I could smell the increasing pungent scent of his medications, but I kept silent. Even if I asked, he would never answer. Not knowing when I might be sent away, I soaked up every bit of useful knowledge like a sponge during my time at Jason's house. Jason used to scold me, but after a while, he stopped. Then it became whatever I wanted to learn, he would teach. Jason was almost perfect in everything he did. The only thing I could clearly feel his frustration about was drawing. Jason couldn't draw. More specifically, he seriously lacked artistic talent. Just pointless stuff. Jason sneered at artists. Drawing a few lines can sell for billions. That's a scam. I ignored him and continued working on my homework. Like Jason, I didn't care for art. But since drawing was the one thing Jason couldn't do, my suppressed competitiveness flared up. So my drawing skills became excellent. Later, listening to the teacher's praise, Jason reluctantly looked at my work and finally nodded in approval. Looks like you got something there. He never hesitated to praise me. Even the first time I missed the target while shooting, he praised me like I was a flower. I could sense Jason's annoyance, but I held back my laughter. In the end, he accepted it well. What he couldn't stand was that I was left-handed. I was used to drawing with my left hand. Jason forced me to change. Linda, you can't let anyone find your weaknesses. So I trained my right hand until I could use both hands equally. One day, he saw a drawing I did with my right hand. Linda, I heard from your teacher that you're great at portraits. He held my drawing and asked excitedly, how about I model for you? No way. I refused instantly. Why? Jason looked hurt, clutching his chest. Aren't I your favorite foster father? 7 years older, my foster father, I retorted, then packed my things. I only sketch for practice, not people. Why? Jason persisted. I only draw the dead. After packing up, I handed my stuff to Jason. But if I kill you, maybe I'll consider it. Jason was carrying my stuff, seriously pondering over it. In the end, regretfully, he told me, you might have to wait a few more years. A few more years. Not 10, not decades. Back then, I didn't pay much attention. I thought it was just another one of Jason's jokes. After all, he always liked to joke around with me. So, even now, I don't believe Jason is really dead. Jason spent 15 years honing me into the sharpest blade in his hand. And with Jason's power, I climbed to the closest position to him. He was right. Our relationship was mutually beneficial from the start. Jason was very clear about that from the beginning, but I still fell in love with him wholeheartedly. With someone as smart as Jason, how could he not sense my feelings? So, 6 years ago, I saw him for the last time. Aren't you always afraid you won't last long in this family? He laid a document on the table with a smile. Linda, now's your chance. You can choose to leave. He looked me in the eye, enunciated every word, or let my family bear your name. Without thinking, I chose the latter. You've learned well. Jason's smile deepened. If the whole family becomes mine, then what about you? I looked up at Jason. It was the first time I showed my ambition so openly in front of him. Before that, I had always kept it well hidden. Jason was taken aback for a moment, then chuckled bitterly. Linda. He paused, then leaned back, suddenly appearing both lazy and dangerous. It was also the first time Jason showed me his most dangerous side. Maybe I inadvertently tempted you, he said after a pause, but I clearly told you, I can't love you. Just can't. I interrupted him with a light laugh. Besides, I don't need your love. I only want the fact that you belong to me. Jason fell silent for a moment, then returned to his usual self. He mumbled softly, Linda, you're growing less cute. But quickly, he laughed again. If you can find me, he handed me his room key, eyes gleaming, then I'll always be yours. I didn't believe Jason's words. So, the night before he left, I tampered with his food. That night was passionate, but the next day, Jason still left. So, I looked for him for 6 years. Dreams are long, but they eventually end. I sat on the bed for a while, then went to Jason's room on the second floor. I always kept the key with me, and Ryan knew that too. Everything in the room was covered in dust. I quietly sat on his bed, staring at the photo on the bedside table. Jason didn't like taking photos. I had to threaten him for this one. Staring at the familiar face I was about to forget, I suddenly laughed. Just wait a bit longer, Jason. I'm going to find you soon. Ryan and Cherry's engagement party didn't go as planned. Whatever happened that day seemed to have pushed Ryan over the edge, making him act more recklessly. Amy told me Cherry was dumb enough to think Ryan loved her. She stupidly handed over her shares to him. Apparently, Ryan's shares now rivaled Sam's. He's brutal everywhere he goes. Good thing you weren't dumb enough to give him your shares. Amy turned to me, her face full of caution. Linda, don't tell me you still like him. I'm telling you, Cherry has already used him. If you really like him, I think Cherry's gift isn't bad. If you hate that it's Cherry's, I'll find you someone else. Seems like rumors of me having a soft spot for Ryan really worried Dr. Amy. She must have read something somewhere, constantly nagging me like an old parent. Of course, I wouldn't give her the company's shares. After all, they're Jason's. I didn't say the last part out loud. Instead, looking at the contract on my laptop, I clicked my tongue. Ryan took the land in the west of the city. Even while focusing on Sam, he didn't forget about me. Lightly tapping the table, I smiled. This is how it should be. For the next month or so, I had little contact with Ryan. Sam's situation worsened. I heard Sam was so infuriated, he had a stroke and ended up in the hospital, cursing Ryan as ungrateful. Ryan now held most of their power, but before securing his position, he went mad, attacking me. Several times, I almost fell into his traps. Such turmoil naturally attracted much attention. Though ruthless, Ryan was never this reckless before. Thinking about his recent actions, I couldn't help but frown, feeling a rare unease. I worried Ryan might ruin my plans, but thankfully, help arrived. It was Cherry. Yet before I could think too much, Cherry caused more trouble. She sent a photo of Tom tied up. Is this your man? Cherry's smile was almost manic. Linda, I have a business proposition for you. One after another, all want to do business. I sighed but agreed. The day of our meeting was gloomy, just like the day Jason left. Besides Cherry, there was another familiar face, Jack, Jason's uncle. Linda is punctual. Cherry glanced at the time, her smile odd. What business do you want to talk about? Don't rush, Linda. She ordered Tom to be brought in, laughing. Linda, why don't you guess why I couldn't make it that afternoon? I knew she was talking about the day we tried on wedding dresses, so I smiled and started talking, pretending I didn't catch the resentment in her tone. It's normal for couples to fight. Couples? Cherry suddenly burst into laughter. How could we be considered a couple? Even now, Ryan only has eyes for you, Linda. I went back that day and told Ryan you couldn't forget about him. Do you know what he did? He locked me up and then went to see you alone. Linda, are you proud of yourself? That ungrateful wolf is still loyal to you, like a dog. We were all deceived by him. He's still your dog. By the end, Cherry was ranting madly. I slightly furrowed my eyebrows, finally letting out a helpless sigh. I thought you were more capable. Cherry froze for a moment. She seemed confused, so I kindly explained further. I thought you could hold Ryan off a bit so I could prepare more. Unfortunately, you couldn't. I frowned in annoyance and complained. I had another big gift prepared. You did it on purpose. Cherry finally understood. She was shaking, staring at me in disbelief. Cherry, I've always said no one is more ruthless than Linda. After a long silence, Jack sighed, looking sympathetic. She could even seize her foster father's business and be ungrateful. Long time no see, Jack. I smiled at him. To be precise, I looked at the wheelchair he was in. How's your leg? Jack's expression changed slightly. Back then, he almost caused Jason to lose both legs. So before kicking Jack out, I personally made sure he lost the use of his legs. Linda, he almost spat the words out. Do you think the company is still the same now? I chuckled. If it's not, then why are you so desperate to get it? Jack was trembling with anger. He took it out on Tom, who was unconscious, but still groaned in pain. Linda, wasn't this guy also one of Jason's men? Jack laughed smugly when he saw me staring at Tom, his tone mocking. Will you just leave him to die? For once, the old man was right. I wouldn't just leave him to die. So I stayed silent for a few seconds, then spoke. What do you want? All your shares. Jack's smile twisted. And your legs. But before that, you have to kneel and beg for my forgiveness. This was within my expectations. The only surprise was that Ryan cared more about me than I thought. She won't agree. This was the first time in over a month that I had seen Ryan. Completely different from the last time. This hurriedly arrived man looked visibly exhausted. I glanced at Cherry, who got suddenly agitated upon seeing Ryan, and my lips curved slightly. Why do you look so worn out? I started fixing Ryan's collar, my actions intimate. How long has it been since you got a good rest? Ryan was stunned by my gesture, his eyes filled with burning heat. He held my hand tightly, almost as if trying to crush it. I smiled as I let Ryan do as he pleased. Seeing Ryan, Jack's face turned even darker. He let out a short laugh. I underestimated you. I smiled and didn't say anything. With Ryan here, I didn't need to personally draw any more hostility. No one noticed Cherry, so when she rushed at me with a knife, Ryan didn't stop her. Or maybe I just didn't give him the chance to. Ryan, finally you get yours. Cherry laughed maniacally, ignoring the pain after being kicked away by Ryan. It was my first time seeing Ryan's face filled with panic. His eyes were red, and he was trembling all over, his mouth opening without a sound. In the end, he could only let out a beast-like growl from his throat. But I ignored him, my eyes on the doorway. It was empty. I thought Jason would appear. I thought he would, like thousands of times before, step in to clean up the mess while mocking me for not handling it myself. I thought 6 years of avoiding me were enough for Jason, but even until I closed my eyes, I didn't see that familiar figure. Even as pain blurred my vision and I desperately wished to see an illusion, Jason still didn't appear. So I could only unwillingly close my eyes. Jason, my hair is a mess again. I complained almost in a whisper, but this time, no Jason would help me clumsily tie my hair. I set up trap after trap, even making myself end up in such a sorry state, yet Jason still didn't show. Only now did I pitifully and hatefully understand one thing. Jason really was dead. Amy is a good doctor, but this good doctor still forged my death certificate, as I wished. When I woke up, Amy slapped me hard, despite me still being a patient. Her voice trembled. Are you still waiting for Jason? I thought you had forgotten him, but when Ryan brought you here, he asked me if Jason was really dead. It was then I realized you were still looking for Jason. You put yourself through all this just to force Jason out, didn't you? But Linda, Jason's dead. No one survived that crash. You knew that. Not looking anymore. I laughed, interrupting Amy and letting out a relieved breath. I'm done looking for him. He doesn't belong to me. Just like the thorn bird. It spends its life looking for the longest, sharpest thorn, then disappears. So Jason would never belong to Linda. Amy fell silent. She didn't continue with the topic, just asked what I planned to do next. Jason left a large sum of money for me in a Swiss bank. I thought for a moment, borrowing a line from a popular meme, the world is so big, I want to see it. I clung to the company, just waiting for Jason to come back. But now, it seemed there was no need to continue. Amy agreed. Before leaving, she threw out a complicated look and said, everyone is just your pawn. I used to curse Ryan, calling him a backstabber, but now I realize, I was way off. Linda, sometimes you're so cold, you scare me. I should have guessed it earlier. Ryan is just like you. No, you're even more ruthless than Ryan. In my world, there's only me. Jason wants me undefeated, so I became the person he wanted. I've always been incredibly selfish. Ryan didn't believe I was dead at first. Just like I didn't believe Jason was dead. But later, he had to believe it. He imprisoned Cherry, making her restless day and night. Jason's company kept its name. Sam's enterprise got swallowed up. Tom became Ryan's right-hand man. Amy sent me a video later. In the video, Ryan knelt before my grave, stabbing his right hand over and over. He whispered with a smile, "Linda, satisfied? If so, come back." His right hand was covered in blood. I only glanced at it before looking away. I wasn't surprised. If Ryan hadn't done this, I'd have been shocked. After all, I'm extremely selfish and petty, even though it was all my plan, and Ryan was following it. Before I got bored, I still set him up. After all, I didn't teach Ryan how to use both hands simultaneously, but it didn't take long for Ryan to find me. "Linda," he croaked, but didn't dare come closer. He could only close his eyes, sounding helpless and suppressed. "I can never be as ruthless as you." "Actually, you did it." I smiled and gently touched Ryan's face. "I taught you well. You're just like the old me." Ryan falling for me was inevitable. He doesn't look like Jason at all, but the first time I saw him, he felt very similar. So I molded him into a second Jason. Ryan falling for me was inevitable, just like my love for Jason was inevitable. But Ryan has a part of me in him, so I intentionally let him know about my unwavering love for Jason. That's why he crazily wanted to destroy everything Jason left behind. I let my hand drop and gave Ryan a light laugh. That trip to the mountains was because I heard Jason might be there. I thought if I couldn't find Jason the usual way, I'd force him out by walking his path. "Ryan, from the moment I agreed to take you out of the mountains, it was all in my plan." I calmly and cruelly exposed the truth. "Why me?" Ryan's voice was hoarse. He stared at me intensely. "Why did it have to be me?" Because later, I realized I might have been a bit wrong. I gave him an apologetic smile. "Actually, you're not like Jason. You're more like me. If I just put myself in a tight spot, Jason wouldn't come out. He might hide and laugh at my futility. So I turned you into a blade, and the blade's tip was aimed at me. We are really alike. Ryan, I deserve to adopt a backstabber. But falling for me, isn't that your own fault?" I chuckled, using Ryan's own words against him. But then I felt it was too boring and sighed. "You crippled my left hand, and I left you the company." "Ryan, now we're even." Even now, I'm still calculating against Ryan. Linda came from Jason. It originally belonged to him. I'm not planning to wait for Jason, but Linda must continue to exist. Whether it's called Linda or Ryan afterward, that's your choice. Ryan calmed down. He just stared at me, trembling to the point his teeth chattered. Finally, his words came out like they were soaked in blood. "If I die too, can I compete with Jason then?" "No." I smiled and shattered his last illusion. "I'll wait for Jason for 6 years, but I'll only stay with Ryan for 5 years." Ryan understood, so he left. I didn't go back, and kept wandering aimlessly around the world. Eventually, tired, I settled down in a small town in Italy. The town was rich in artistic vibes. There, I found Jason's grave. In front of it were only 2 hair ties. When Amy heard I had settled down, she was silent for a while. "Didn't you say you gave up?" I shrugged, joking. Someone without artistic cells ended up buried in an art capital. "Amy, don't you think Jason hated me so much he didn't even want me to guess where he'd be?" Amy was silent for a long time. She told me Jason's last words were about me. He said, "Now I finally get to be Linda's model. I once told Jason I only draw the dead." Jason died. I suddenly wanted to laugh, but couldn't smile. I used to be good at fake smiling. Seeing my silence, Amy asked, "Linda, are you crying?" "I don't cry." I exhaled deeply, blinking my somewhat sore eyes. "Amy, actually, I was supposed to be on that plane. I was supposed to fly abroad to sign that contract. He didn't have much time left anyway." Amy told me, "Linda, it's not your fault." "I know." Amy changed the subject, telling me recent events. She said she'd come find me after she was done with her work. I said, "Okay." Later, I went to see Jason, carrying a painting. "Jason, I'm starting to forget what you look like." I burned the painting in front of his grave, joking. "So if it doesn't look like you, come curse me in my dreams. Or maybe not." I paused and, after thinking seriously, said, "I'm afraid I'll make you die again." Only the sound of wind replied. As I left, it started to drizzle. I looked at the photo on the tombstone and whispered, "Jason, this time I really won't wait for you. Goodbye."